Welcome back to another episode of the DFS Express presented by Loudmouth MMA, the DFS Army, and Newsom MMA. I am your host, the Daily Fantasy Sniper, and we're here to talk UFC 228. The main event, as of right now, is Tyron Woodley taking on Darren Till. Reportedly, Kamaru Usman is waiting in the wings should Darren Till not make weight. Woodley would still have to accept. I kind of think that could be an issue, but we'll talk about that fight later. It is good to be back with you guys. I'm sorry I'm not doing this episode live on YouTube. They're having all kinds of technical issues. We had that long break, and then 2 weeks ago I recorded. It didn't go live. I ended up not being able to get a video up, so I want to apologize for that. Missed the Lincoln card, Gaethje and Vic, but we are back and ready to roll for UFC 228. Can't spend too much time because if I don't go live, I have a 15-minute time limit. And we have 14 fights on this card. Real quick, make sure and go follow all those guys I mentioned in the open at Loudmouth MMA, DFS Army, where I'm a coach for DraftKings MMA, soccer. Check them out. There's a link down in the description on YouTube. And Newsom MMA, tons of great content over there from all kinds of guys on YouTube, breaking down fights, really great stuff. And as always, give me a follow on Twitter at the DFS Sniper. Follow my and subscribe to my YouTube page if that is where you are watching this video. If you're listening on one of those other sources, obviously, thank you for checking this out. Please jump over, subscribe to my YouTube page. I think that's enough of the intro. Let's get to some fights. It has been long enough. We have Jeff Neal at 8,700 taking on Frank Camacho at 7,500. The line of this fight, Camacho is the underdog at plus 160. Jeff Neal at minus 185. Should be an all-action fight to get us started. Jeff Neal coming off of a submission win over Brian Camozzi. Okay, I mean, it's Brian Camozzi. Frank Camacho, on the other hand, has wars. He's been in there with Li Jinglong, Damian Brown, Drew Dober. Those last two fights, all-out slugfest. He's a tough guy to finish. He has been finished on the regional scene. I think this is going to be a stand and trade type of fight. We're going to talk throughout this episode. It's really hard to build a cash lineup. I'll talk about, as the week goes on, I do some more builds. I'll have some more info for our DFS Army VIPs in our Slack chat, so make sure you are a member there. Oh, I didn't mention in the open, use the code SNIPER for 10% off. Sorry if you're tired of hearing that. But we're really hurting for underdogs, and Frank Camacho is in a spot where even in his UFC loss against Li Jinglong, he scored 26 points. I know that's not great. He has a takedown in all of his fights. Tough guy, stands and trades, high volume. His two other fights, one win, one loss, he landed 154 and 106 significant strikes. Jeff Neal's a little unproven for me, but overall I think is the better prospect. I'm going to lean towards Camacho as the better DFS play just because we need punts. Jeff Neal is probably the pick to win the fight because he's a little more polished, has submission game, and Camacho has shown that he is obviously very hittable. But for DFS, I'll take Frank Camacho at 7,500. Short notice fight, Jared Brooks replaces Ryan Benoit. He's at 9,000, taking on Roberto Sanchez at 7,200. The line on this fight, Jared Brooks is a minus 340 favorite. The comeback on Sanchez is plus 280. Look at this matchup. It's grappler versus grappler. Sanchez has more of a BJJ pedigree. He has got a really good rear naked choke. People remember Brooks from knocking himself out against Jose Shorty Torres. Problem here is Sanchez has really bad striking. I think Brooks, while Brooks' striking isn't great, I think he has more than Sanchez. He also is a high-level grappler, wrestler. Should be able to control the fight. I think this is an interesting one for GPPs because Brooks will either score well with a lot of takedowns and control, or Sanchez is going to land a submission. Again, for DFS, I know I'm picking two dogs in a row, but we're kind of short for dogs who I think can score big. Sanchez with a submission threat is one. He's my preferred play at 7,200, but make sure you have some Jared Brooks in tournaments because I don't think he's going to be popular just based on he knocked himself out last fight. So both in play, but I think point per dollar wise, Sanchez is worth a dart in GPPs at 7,200. Irene Aldana, 8,200, taking on Lucy Pudilova, 8,000. This is one of those fights I'm really not going to have a ton of exposure to. I know Pudilova scored well in her last matchup, but she had two knockdowns, and she scored 99 points. You're not going to see a ton of that. Irene Aldana, her UFC win, she had 103 points, but that was against Talita Bernardo, who brought a ground game. There was reversal. She got on top, advances. These two are going to stand and trade. Pudilova's going to try and get this into the clinch. If there's going to be takedowns, I suspect it'll be her. I don't think this fight scores great overall. Skill for skill, I'm actually leaning towards Pudilova right now. I like what she can do in the clinch, and Aldana has struggled with pressure before. Leslie Smith, Leslie Smith pressure is different, but I think if Pudilova brings that grinding style, she could get the win here. Again, not a fight I'm super interested in, but I'll take Lucy Pudilova for 8,000. Now we get back-to-back fights that are really interesting for the same reason. We have Alex White at 8,600 taking on Jim Miller at 7,600. White's a minus 150 favorite. The comeback on Jim Miller is plus 130. The narrative to this fight is the same as the next. How done is Jim Miller and how done is Diego Sanchez? Jim Miller, we'll get to in a second with Diego Sanchez, but Jim Miller, he had the skill set with the leg kicks. He's on 4 straight losses. But Alex White doesn't have great fight IQ and can be taken down. I think that's where Jim Miller could have some success in this one. He's been knocked out by Dan Hooker. That was last time out. And before that, he had 3 straight decision losses. Anthony Pettis, Dustin Poirier, Francisco Trinaldo. Way better competition than Alex White. Whereas Alex White has been in there. I think he's 3-4 in the UFC. He's got a loss to James Krause, a win against Mitch Clark. He is the bigger guy. This fight's at 170. I'm going to lean Alex White here. Miller is one of my live dogs, but I think he's going to be a chalky dog here. But overall, I think there's too much deterioration. I think the size discrepancy is really what I'm going to look for a weigh-in day. I don't think Miller will be able to control White, and White is explosive enough to get this done. Not one of my favorite plays on the card, and I do think Miller's going to be chalky. So for those reasons, I'm going to go with Alex White at 8,600. We have Craig White at 8,800 taking on Diego Nightmare Sanchez at 7,400. Now, what I was going to say is Sanchez is clearly the more done fighter, as he's a plus 195 underdog. White's the favorite at minus 235. Well, he's the more done fighter. He's taking on the less prospect. Like Craig White's okay, but he went in, he got starched by Neil Magny on short notice, so he gets, a decent fight here. I'm not sure how good he is. I think Diego, the problem is Diego's been knocked out 3 of his last 4 fights. The only guy who didn't finish him was Marcin Held. Damian Brown, Ali Quinta, Joe Lozon, and that was 2016 Joe Lozon, so not great. I think Sanchez is a GPP play. I can't trust Craig White at 8,800. I know he's taking on Nightmare. There's too many good pay-up options. I don't think it's enough of a discount to get me interested. As you can tell in tournaments, I think I'm leaning towards Stars and Scrubs construction. Should always mix in your mid-price lineups, but I think I'll take Sanchez point per dollar, just that veteran experience. And I don't think Craig White is that good. I think Sanchez can possibly get a takedown here, do a little bit of work. Just a matter of if that chin is gone, and that's a decision you have to make. But point per dollar, I'll take Diego Sanchez at 7,400. Charles Byrd, 8,900, taking on Darren Stewart at 7,300. Darren Stewart coming off a knockout win against Eric Spicely. Before that, he had lost 3 straight fights, Franco Marbojoso, Carl Roberson, Julian Marquez. Not the best fight IQ. A win over Eric Spicely doesn't do much for me. I picked against him in that fight. He did a good enough job stopping the takedown. I think Byrd is better at getting the takedown. He's more explosive. Byrd is one of those pivot pay-up options off of the Shevchenkos and Suarez and Magomed Sharipovs that people are going to be looking at. I like Byrd to get it done here against Darren Stewart. I think he is the much better prospect. I think he's going to be faster. I think he can get this fight to the ground. Overall, I think Charles Byrd is better everywhere. Byrd, by the way, the line on him is minus 225. Stewart's plus 185. So Bird's in a spot I like here as a pivot, as I mentioned. So he's the preferred play at 8,900. Next up, Jimmy Rivera taking on John Dodson. Rivera's 8,400, Dodson 7,800. Obviously running tight on time already in this video. This is a fight I'm going to breeze by because John Dodson fights don't score well for DraftKings. They just don't. I know Rivera's a takedown artist, but Dodson has good takedown defense. Fights the split decisions all the time. A win over Pedro Munhoz last time out was good. Split decision loss to Marlon Moraes, who just knocked out Rivera. Look, this fight's not going to score well. I'm probably going to pass. Overall, I think Rivera just being more active is going to take a decision, but it's close. I'll take him at 8,400, but again, not a fight I'm really interested in. Aljamain Sterling, 8,500, taking on Cody Stamann at 7,700. The line on this fight, Aljamain Sterling is a small favorite right now. He is at, see, last time I checked, I want to get an updated line on this fight. Really liking that I am losing time on this already tight episode. Minus 140, Stamann's plus 120, the comeback. Another interesting scenario where I think this fight's going to play out at range because of they both have, Stamann's not going to be able to take down Aljo like he did Tom Duquesnoy and Terrion Ware. Aljamain Sterling has got good wrestling. He showed it in his last fight against Brett Johns. Stamann's got a good enough wrestling pedigree that I'm not sure that Aljo can roll over him on the ground. Aljo is the longer fighter, more experienced. I like Aljo to win a close decision here. And if anyone's going to have grappling upside, I think Aljamain would have is more potential to win with a grappling-based decision. So I'll take Aljamain Sterling at 8,500. Tatiana Suarez, 9,200, taking on Carla Esparza, 7,000. Esparza surprised me last time against Claudia Gadelha. Gadelha did not look great, but Suarez is DraftKings gold. One of those few, happened a few times on this card. 113 against Grasso, 125 against Pereira, 113 against ABC Cooper. She's bigger than Esparza, should be much bigger. I think a better grappler, more complete game. I like Tatiana Suarez in this one. I'm going to roster a ton of her at 9,200. Next up, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, 8,300, taking on Nico Price at 7,900. The closest, really interesting mid-tier fight, a close fight that I think is going to be important for GPPs. Al Hassan, big power. I do question his gas tank. Coming off 2 straight wins against Sabah Homasi because of that weird stoppage and a win over Charlie Ward. His other UFC fight was a loss to Omari Akhmedov, where he slowed down a little bit, showed he can be taken down. Well, I don't think Nico Price's game is as good as Omari Akhmedov on the ground. I think he has enough there. I think Price's only UFC loss is to Vicente Luque. He seems to always be the dog. He's a guy I'm kind of high on. I think he survives the first 3 to 4 minutes against Al Hassan, gets this fight to the ground, and I think he'll have a pretty big advantage on the ground. I know Al Hassan's a judoka, but I think Price has enough to get it down there and do some damage and get the win. GPP fight, but I'll take Nico Price at 7,900. Next up, Jessica Andrade at 9,100, taking on Karolina Kowalkiewicz at 7,100. Look, bad matchup for Kowalkiewicz. Kowalkiewicz couldn't stop a takedown from Claudia Gadelha. I get that she was able to piece up Felice Herrig and Jody Escobar. Andrade brings a different level of physicality. I like Andrade here. If she shows up, it should be her fight. Probably my least favorite of these really expensive fighters, but still somebody you have to mix and match. And if she falls into your lineup, I wouldn't be afraid to play her. Andrade is the play at 9,100. Zabit Magomed Sharipov, 9,400, taking on Brandon Davis at 6,800. Short notice replacement. Davis replaces Yair Rodriguez. Look, Davis, super tough, active, going to bring the fight to Zabit, but Zabit should just be too skilled everywhere. Wushu guy, you know who he is. He can take this fight to the ground. The fight got brought to him by Kyle Bochniak. I think that was a great experience for him. I think he'll learn from it. I think he'll use his range, some takedowns. I think he's, he's going to beat the crap out of Brandon Davis, or he should, as rack up some points. So he's the safe play at 9,400. Next up, same story, Valentina Shevchenko, 9,600, taking on Nico Montano, 6,600. Look, this is similar to when Esparza was the champion and she has to defend against Joanna in terms of winning a belt on tough. Shevchenko's just better everywhere. I respect Montano. I don't want to talk too much trash about her. Shevchenko's just on a different level. If you can fit her in at her ridiculous price tag, you can play her in cash. Tournament, I don't know if she's going to pay off her salary, but she's the preferred play at 9,600. I know we're getting close on time. Darren Till, 8,100, taking on Tyron Woodley at 8,100. Pick'em fight. A main event that I actually don't like for DraftKings. We clearly have seen that both these guys can put on slow-paced fights. Woodley against Wonderboy and Maya. Till against Wonderboy as well. Also didn't look great against Velichkovic. Look, I think Woodley's the all-around better guy. I think Till is getting hyped up. You can't call him Francis Ngannou, but he's a product of the hype. The UFC needs guys like this. I think Woodley gets a takedown at some point in the fight, or several times, does work, either grinds out a decision or gets a late stoppage. Till being so much bigger is live to the knockout. I'm not fading Darren Till. There's also the possibility this fight is a stinker. I don't think the stack is going to pay off here. I don't want two dead spots. Pick'em wise, I'll take Woodley, play both these guys in GPP, and I'm not sure if I'm going to play the main event at all in cash because you have Shevchenko and Montano, which is a stackable fight if you want to go that way. But the pick here is Tyron Woodley, right up against 15 minutes. I'm going to try to go back to doing these live next week for the next card. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, Loudmouth MMA, Newsome MMA, DFS Army. I have been the Daily Fantasy Sniper. Good luck in your contest. I will see you next week.